Okay, so as the school guidelines are coming down from different state and agencies about what public school is looking like, it seems like a lot of people are just looking at homeschooling because they don't even think the idea of distance learning is really good for their kids. And the idea of kids having to wear masks at school and just all these ridiculous amount of things that we would be and the burdens we'd be placing on students and teachers, that homeschooling is like a really good option. So I've been getting a lot of messages of just people that are asking for where to kind of get started and where to get help. And this is even people, I'm in Texas, so most of what I'm getting is from Texas, but there are people in other states as well. So if you're in the state of Texas, homeschooling is super easy. All you have to do is just start doing it. If your child is technically enrolled in public school, you do have to unenroll them. Otherwise, that's kind of all there is. It varies per state, so you will need to look at your individual state and kind of what things they have to do. The HLSDA website is a really wonderful organization to look into, knowing what the laws are and what your parental rights are as well. But as far as homeschooling in Texas, you just get to do it. The only requirements are that you are teaching certain subjects. That's it. There's no required testing. There's no, you don't have to keep, I mean, it's smart to keep records, but you don't have to turn in records, portfolios, or anything like that. You just can start doing it. So mostly what my experience has been with doing kind of more the elementary age, and I'm not super familiar about what all is out there for the older grades, but there are some really good stuff out there. As for me, we plan to pursue classical conversation, and it's something that can be done from ages 4 to 17, 18 years old. It's something you can start at the elementary level or even the middle school level. I think if you were to start it probably at the high school level, it probably would not really work out very well, but it could still be done for sure. I think if I was just now jumping in and I had middle schoolers or high schoolers, I would kind of probably take a bit more of an unschooling approach for about a year and just kind of let the kids at that age kind of learn and pursue what they are most interested in, with maybe just a few guidelines in place, like maybe they do have to do an assigned math. I think one of the best go-to math programs out there is Saxon Math, and it's something we are considering for next year, but I know a lot of homeschoolers use others. It's even been used in public schools in the past. It's a really good math program for little kids. Master books might be something easy to do. I think what's important is not to make school at home. Homeschooling is not a 6-hour ordeal. It is usually done in at most 3 hours a day, or maybe you're just going to do 2-3 days a week for 4 or 5 hours kind of thing. It's a very slow as you go pace kind of thing. You don't have to sit at a desk. You can sit on the couch and things like that. As far as reading goes, if you're at the elementary level, you can look into various phonics program and see what works best for your kid. All About Reading is good. I've heard Jolly Phonics is good. Hooked on Phonics even. I used Project Read because that's what I used when I taught. If you have a kid that's just not entering kindergarten, teaching your child to read in 100 easy lessons, I would recommend. As far as like if you have multiple kids, and history is one of those subjects you could do all together as a family. That's what we're doing. Even though my youngest is more pre-K age, she's not really being taught the history, but she's going to be around to hear it. And Simply Charlotte Mason has some really good history that you can use. There's also Story of the World that looks pretty good. And you can do, even if your kid's in kindergarten or your kid's in 3rd grade, you can kind of basically do the same thing. You could vary just maybe the type of books you are reading. So maybe if you're just doing one chapter book read aloud to your 6-year-old and your 9-year-old, but you're covering the same subject. Or maybe your 12-year-old can read the book Up From Slavery himself, and you're going to cover some, picture books about slavery with your child, or, your 6-year-old. There's a lot of really good history stuff out there. There's also, I think science is probably not the best subject that I have this much knowledge to speak on, and what's available and what's out there. Definitely for little kids, under the age of 10 maybe. I think needs to be a lot of just doing experiments and exploring their environment, and you could just get an easy experiment book and do things, and don't make it about having to do worksheets and like as far as the scientific method goes, just talk about it, work it out kind of thing. Like, don't give your kid a lab sheet that they need to fill out. In fact, don't try to not to give your kid worksheets. I think math is pretty acceptable for worksheets. As far as writing goes, I'm not really starting writing until 3rd grade with my kids. They're going to be getting a little bit of writing skills, but it's not going to be very formal. And I'll probably be using the Institute's Excellence for Writing program is probably what we will use. There is just so much out there. There's a lot of box curriculums. I hear good things about Abeka and Sunlight. I have someone that uses Bob Jones. And there's sometimes things where you can do like a video, and then there might be like a workbook and things like that. I think limiting the amount of worksheets you do with your kids is a huge, huge ordeal. And in schools, kids, they have to have something to turn in so the teacher can take a grade. You don't need to grade your child. In fact, you shouldn't be grading your child at all. You work out things with them. Like, if they're messing up, have problems, you work it out with them. If they made an error in their writing, you just work it out with them. Don't do a grade. I think I graded my oldest one's like something for math one time, and I put 100 on there, and she was like, "Why'd you do that?" Kind of thing. So, for science for little kids, you can always start out with just something so simple and doing nature study. Just them being able to explore their environment around them and learning the names of the plants and the animals that are in their own backyard and their neighborhood and the park, and keeping it kind of easy like that. You can always, if your plan is just to maybe homeschool for 1 year and then put them back in public school in the hopes that maybe this like COVID thing will blow over, I honestly think it'll probably be this way for a few years. I don't know. I don't know how. I think people are crazy, so we don't know how it's going to go. But if your plan's only maybe to really do it for a year, then you may need to look at your state's teaching standards and kind of get an idea of what is being taught. Now, I'm not saying I agree with whatever the state standards are, because a lot of times they're not very developmentally appropriate for kids. So that can just kind of vary. Something like K through 12 I've heard is really popular. That is not homeschooling. That is more like doing a charter school type thing where you are, it is an online thing, but it's also something you can sit and do with your kids as well. I encourage you to search Facebook groups for local homeschooling communities in your area. And, I still think that despite there being this virus, that, praise the Lord, is not very harmful to 99.999% of children, and that you can get connected with a co-op kind of thing. So, because your kid still needs to have interactions with other children, and I don't think it would be healthy to completely isolate them for a whole year unless they are a high risk or compromised child, and I can totally understand that. But if for the most part, if they're a healthy kid and you commute up once a week with 10, 20 other kids and their moms or dads, to just kind of, whatever that can be. And I don't know what kind of, groups are in your area. If you're interested in classical conversations, you can go to their website and you can search for by zip code to see what is available in your area if that's something you're interested in. That is a paid program, so it's not like it's not your typical co-op, but it's something that is really neat and kind of goes back to that classical model of education. You can see one of my other videos about why we decided on classical conversations. And I plan on doing another video of what we are going to be doing for first grade, but I'm still waiting on a few more resources and things, and I might be making that video a couple weeks from now. So please feel free to, if you want to get a hold of me easily, if you go to my Facebook or my Instagram, the Set at Home Mom, and that way you can send me a direct message, and I will be so happy to help you in any way I can. If you know me personally, reach out to my Facebook page, and I can always give you my cell number in case we want to talk a little bit about that. Anyway, I want y'all to hopefully see the beauty that's really in homeschooling, because it can really be a beautiful thing. I think it is so much easier than trying to do this distance learning or doing school at home or going to public school. I think it's better for kids mentally, physically, socially, emotionally, spiritually. They're in a safe environment. You're in control of what they're being taught, and how they're taught. If your kid has learning difficulties, the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that they can learn at their own pace. And when something is really hard for them, you can put it to the side, come back to it later, or you can just kind of keep working on it. You can find another way to do it. And the benefits of a co-op is when you can reach and talk to other parents about what they're doing, how are they teaching this, what curriculum are they using, and you get a good support in your homeschooling community. And it's really good just to be able to sometimes to talk to other adults too. If you have any questions, send me a message or drop a comment.